And we are live. Hey, everybody, this is Peter Palmiotti, and this is Studio Synergy 48, the triumphant return of Studio Synergy. Because it's been a while. Recently on my channel, I've done a couple of hangout with friends, and I decided just to go forward and come back with my group hangouts with other artists. And I got a couple of folks here. People who watch past episodes remember Jeremy.
Hey, all. Gerimi Burliegh.
Hi, Jeremy.
And where can they find you?
You can find my work at gerimi.net. That's GERIMI.net.
Very simple. I love it. And we have a new folk here, Mr. Scott.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? I'm Scott O'Green, and you can find me on Instagram at Mr. Green Draws. That's mr.greendraws. And anywhere else on Facebook or on YouTube under I'd Rather Be Drawing. So hello, and thanks for having me, Peter.
Oh, my pleasure, man.
Thanks again for the invite.
Definitely. So, let's see. One of the recent developments here in my tiny apartment is that I sort of have it. Some people classify it as a studio apartment. It's actually technically a new bedroom apartment. Because there's no doors other than the bathroom door.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a difficult time having two cats climb all over me, trying to figure out how the hell am I going to separate it where it's kind of convenient for me, or I could just trap them on the other side of the apartment while I'm working in my studio. And my ex actually came up with, well, get a screen door. So that's what we did, and we put it up. And now I could see them if they want to, get the hell out of your house or whatever. They'll start meowing on the other side of the screen door.
So do you ever just let the screen door bang shut to get that old Andy Griffith show? Old timey feeling or anything?
It's actually pretty good. It doesn't slam shut. It just wedges against the other wall. So
that's probably good in an apartment building. So your neighbors probably appreciate that.
Yeah. Neighbors are pretty much like, the walls are thin, so I wouldn't want to be slamming any doors.
There you go. I guess I'm lucky as far as the animal thing goes. We just have a guinea pig, and he doesn't really climb around on us very much. He just sort of stays put, so I don't have to build up too many barricades.
Oh, that's awesome.
Unathletic rat, so it works out.
I was surprised when you said that the screen door was actually working, because I figure it doesn't matter how many rooms you have. My cats are they want to be involved. I'm actually pretty surprised they aren't climbing on the table right now, but they were trying to get on my desk a little bit before we started. They're now kind of quietly in one corner of the studio. I have a round chair, a faux papasan chair that I bought for my wife to kind of hang out in the studio when I'm in here for hours and hours. That's not her chair. It's the cat's chair.
It's not a cat bed.
Exactly. It's become a giant cat. And what happens is we've got two cats. One of them sits on top, and then the other one actually lies underneath the bed, because the one on top is pretty possessive about it. So
that's nice that they have their roles and they really kind of just stick to that.
Well, when they were kittens, they used to lay in the chair together, and it was really cute. You see them all kind of nuzzled up, but now they've gotten, they've grown up. They do this thing where they come up, they start nuzzling each other, they'll lick each other's faces, and they'll do that for about 30 seconds, and then after about maybe by a minute, they start biting each other's ears, and then they're chasing each other around the house. So they got a love-hate relationship.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a lot of cats. You know, you get the loners, um, which it's like I have two cats here, but I have another cat which is sort of in a pet sanctuary at the moment.
Hmm.
Um, and he's pretty much, you know, keeps to himself. But these cats, they'll like play with anyone. I have a stray that's actually been coming here at night and staying over sometimes.
That's nice. Got some neighbors camping out.
Yeah, it's like I don't need to be feeding another cat all the time, but it's a really sweet cat.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, you know, technically in this place I can only have one cat. But you know, I'm looking to get out of here. Probably in the fall, hopefully, if all goes well. Um, yeah, it's just I just got here, like, you know, if if you haven't heard all the details, you know, I broke up with my ex. I was
Mhm.
engaged. Um, we're still best friends, you know, pretty much living both in a small town in Kentucky. Um, and we see each other a lot. But yeah, I just got this small place to have a roof over my head until I figured out exactly, you know, what my situation was and what I want to do. So I'm hoping to possibly rent a house. Um, some of the prices are ridiculous, so we'll see how that works out.
Mm.
Um, then you're always, you know, you're always adding so much more for utilities and whatnot. Um, but this does for now. You know, it's good to have a roof over my head, especially in this. You know, over here it's scorching hot. Um, you
And
know, I
you're in
have my
Kentucky, is that right?
yeah. I'm in Kentucky, small town Campbellsville.
So what is summer
Uh,
like in Kentucky? I have no idea.
it's it's really nice. I mean, you know, this is a poor town, you know, but I'm like south of Louisville and Lexington, which are bigger places. They're about like an hour, a little bit more away from here. But it's just, you know, it's not exactly country. It's just, you know, a bunch of people and businesses and I don't know how to explain it, but
Is
I
it one
like
of
it.
Not
those
country, but
towns?
town.
What's that?
Not country,
Uh,
but town. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, town. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Is it kind of a place where like everybody kind of at least knows everybody's name, that kind of thing within the whole town kind of thing?
it's not that small. you know,
Until you do
uh,
something wrong.
you know, it's. I didn't look it up lately, but I don't know, maybe 10,000 people
Okay.
town. I mean, I'm from New York, so everything's smaller. You know, I'm from Brooklyn. That's like 3 million people
Hmm.
out there. Um, but yeah, I like it, and like my intention is to stay here. Like I said, I'll get something bigger for now. But I would love to move outside of town and have like acreage one day.
Well, that'd be nice. Get like kind of a mini farm kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, it's my objective is to build like a small art community of some sort. So I have big dreams.
Heck yeah. Best to get started on them right away, then, right?
Yeah. So you know, it's what I'm working towards. It's like you know, the short term goals for like this year is to actually start self publishing. Um, you know, it's like for all the time I've been working in comics, which is since 1991, way back when. Um, you know, I still haven't self published, so it's time.
I thought
um,
that you had published part of your Brandeis story at some point that you'd been working on. Yep.
no, you know, it's like I'm really good about pushing things back. I keep rescheduling my ultimate plan. I will. Well, I'm definitely going to publish like there's this one shot that might be more than a one shot, but it's what I have the most done. It's called Arena, although I might call it Alien Arena just because Arena is too bland.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one shot that I inked years ago. That I just told the guy, look, you know, it's like I saw he publishes other books, and I was like, well, you know, production could be so much better on that. Let me do it myself. And I sort of been holding on to that. It's pretty much penciled, ink, colored, lettered, and 95% ready to go.
Oh,
But
nice.
I wanted to have something of my own come out pretty close to when I put that out. So I'm still not sure what I'm doing first. But it will be something, you know, probably late fall or early winter ish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it's like I'm taking this summer to get a lot of ducks in a row and work more on the business side of things and uh, all that jazz.
I like the idea of being an artist and putting a creative mind towards the business side of stuff. A lot of people seem to make it like, oh, I'd rather just do my art all the time. And that is fun. But now that I'm starting to try to figure out how to, okay, now I've made a product. Now I got to tell people about it and try to get it in their hands. I feel like it's a lot of fun to apply that same sort of creativity. But it is exhausting because I really have no idea what I'm doing. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is definitely like, you know, you could benefit from having that sort of creative business mindset. And I'm sure Jeremy could talk on this.
Well,
Um, yeah, go
I,
ahead.
well, I was gonna say, I definitely feel like I'm kind of like what you said earlier, Scott, about always learning and kind of learning by mistake. I still feel like I have a ton that I'm trying to figure out. Like I'm trying to wrap my mind around possibly launching a Kickstarter at some point or starting a Patreon. But I mean, for me, a lot of that stuff that you were saying about how exhausting looking at the business side is, I definitely do feel like exactly the same way that you do in terms of it's a different way to exercise those creative muscles, but it's almost like in the way that drawing for me, I can kind of relax, and I mean I still have to make sure that the storytelling is working, but I can kind of like really let my brain enjoy itself. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with writing, I've got to focus. Um,
Yeah.
I can only have certain type of music on, and I kind of really, and your brain will wear out after like an hour or two. I feel like handling the business stuff is more akin to writing, whereas everything else in comics is more of just the drawing part, where it's like, oh, goody, I'm just making stuff. Like even when I'm, doing gray tones or coloring, it's just I can kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy myself a little bit.
I definitely agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, you know, it's like I don't know if you've been following Ethan Van Sciver on Indiegogo.
I haven't followed his campaign, but I do check out videos on his YouTube channel.
I tried watching it. I can't get into him. You know, it's like I know, you know, I mean, I don't know him, but you know, I met him a couple of times years and years ago. Um, but you know, it seems more clickbaity, and I don't know, just the ones I clicked on didn't seem to interest me. I'm more, you know, I'm too tame, I guess. He's he's too excitable.
Well, sometimes I will intentionally watch things that aren't necessarily my cup of tea because I
Yeah.
want to see how other people are approaching things and how other people are trying to skin that cat, for lack of a better term. Because there's a lot of things that I wouldn't do that work for other people that it is interesting for me just to analyze and look at what kind of results they're getting, because then I can say, all right, well, how's a way to try and get the results they're getting, whether it's getting sales, whether it's getting people to sign up for my newsletter, whether it's just straight up just connecting with people and talking to them. Like, how are ways that I can do that where I can get the results I see other people getting, but in a way that feels authentic to me? Because I'm
Yeah.
still trying to figure out my voice in terms of what my brand is. Like, it's a conversation that I had with a buddy of mine, and the fact that my first graphic novel was a psychological thriller, and then the project I'm working on now is a supernatural western. And they say that in order to build an audience, it's a good idea to write at least in the same genre, if not write like an ongoing series. And it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that, because my brain, the way creativity works in my mind, I intentionally want to do something as different. When I finish a project, whatever I want to do next, I want to be as different from the thing I just finished as possible. Because it's kind of like I want to work in all genres. So it's like, well, how do you build a brand around that? And I think it's hard to find examples of people that have worked. Like, it's one thing for someone who's published in one or two different genres, but somebody who's literally just trying to work their way through everything. And then also to find somebody who's working their way through everything, but is doing things, publishing independently and self-publishing. And then even on top of that, it's hard to find someone who's doing all of that, and then they're also a writer and artist. Because the advantage that writers have is that, well, writers are hamstrung by not having, by it's harder to find an artist. I have a lot of writer friends, and that's the biggest struggle everybody has, is trying to get somebody to draw their book, because it's either having the budget for it or having somebody that is so on the same page that they can split the property 50-50 and figure out how to make the business equitable for someone that's spending so much time drawing, but also that the person who's writing has time for it. But on the art side, there's very few people I see that are doing self-publishing, and they're doing the whole thing, the writing, the drawing, all of that. Like, most of the people I see that are doing that aren't necessarily in the superhero or singles comic book, like more adventure, sci-fi, fantasy. Most people I see that are doing everything themselves are kind of in the webcomic space. And I do enjoy webcomics, but most of the webcomics I read are humor-based. So now I'm kind of like going back and trying to look a little bit more at some other people that are doing webcomics, but are doing stuff that's more genre-based as opposed to straight-up humor strips.
Yeah, it's like I think of like my favorite novelist, which is Stephen King.
Mm-hmm.
And he built his career off of doing horror books. He's done other things,
Mm-hmm.
other kind of stories uh, since the beginning of his career. But really, it's like people know him for horror. But I think it's a different world now. I mean, if you're a writer, then people. In the comic industry, I think people tend to accept more nowadays that you write different things. You write a Western story, you write a sci-fi story, you write a romance story, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more acceptable. So back to Ethan Van Sciver. Yeah, his Indiegogo is like just going insane, and mind you, like, I think it's different on Indiegogo than it is on Kickstarter. I mean, you set a date for a campaign to end on Kickstarter, and that's it. You can't change it, I believe. I haven't done one myself. But on Indiegogo, and I've watched his campaign out of interest, and he's changed the end date.
Really?
Yeah. At least, I think it was originally up for a month. It's gone on, I believe it's now 2 months, the end date.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no telling if he might extend it at the last second. I don't know. Maybe you only get to do that once. I have no idea how it works, but I thought that was really interesting because it seems to be that he's going for $500,000 at this point.
That's a pretty high bar to hit for any kind of crowdfunded campaign. I mean,
Well, right now it's at 440,000, something like that. But
for a comic book?
For a comic book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Well,
but
why does he need to expand it then? If he's already got if his original goal $500,000?
No, it was like 8,000. So he's.
I wonder if you achieve your goal within your time frame, then you can adjust your goal and time frame or something. Well, let's go for more if we made it this far, stretch goals on Kickstarter or something. I don't know. I'm not real familiar with Indiegogo.
It's set up differently, but I have less knowledge about Indiegogo than I do Kickstarter. I plan to do a Kickstarter myself. For a bunch of different things. And I've been part of campaigns to where I could see the inner workings of it. But I haven't run one myself. Obviously like my brother has run, I think 9 different campaigns now, all of them successful.
Wow.
Not crazy, but
but you build up equity with you build up equity with the community on there with each successful one you have. So
yeah, it's comics don't make most people money, but if you can sell a lot of your books, then that really ups your game as far as making money elsewhere. So I think in the long run, even if you don't make a dime, it's worth it.
Well, it kind of goes a little bit into something that I wrote down that you were talking about before, Jeremy, with nowadays when people talk about so much with being able to get to know everybody online, that you're really sort of selling, yes, your art, but you're selling yourself as the artist. Mm-hmm. So in the idea of I never really worried too much about what style am I going to develop or what's it going to look like, because I want to do a lot of different stuff, and I always sort of figured that the style for the story should sort of be dictated by the story you're going to tell. So if you want it more playful and childlike, that's what that would look like. And I don't know, it almost seems like more than your artwork nowadays, as far as branding yourself, you're branding the artist, not the artwork. So this common denominator for whatever you do or whatever any of us do is really just Jake Parker, for instance. Regardless of what he does, his brand is Jake Parker, not necessarily Adventure Comics, or Jeff Smith, his brand is Bone, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it almost seems like nowadays, to sell a comic, or like you said, if that doesn't make you a whole lot of money, it's almost like a comic is just a further way to push your brand as an artist. So as you have these different things that you do and avenues of making money, whether it's t-shirts or comics or whatever, just another way to kind of get your brand in somebody's home, I guess.
Yeah. I think that it's challenging, particularly because I've talked with other artists, and the people that seem to be doing really well at the convention scene aren't necessarily doing comics. They're doing a lot more of, and it's not even fan art. It's a lot of it's just people doing standalone art prints and selling originals. And whether it's doing a fan art piece or whether they're doing their own characters they came up with, the people I see that are doing, making an ongoing, substantial living where they don't have to have a day job, are doing a lot more of that work. And it's the challenge of, if you're doing comics, that it's that schedule, the time that it's so time intensive that it makes it hard to build up that audience, because it's almost like a big part of it is just producing work on a regular basis. Even if it's not monthly, maybe it's bi-monthly or quarterly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole challenge of balance, it just keeps seeming to come back to for artists.
We have a comment from, okay, there's a bunch of people. Well, there's a couple of people watching. James, hey James, and David Fleming. Never heard of the guy.
David is my partner in crime on I'd Rather Be Drawing.
I know.
Oh.
Let's make it. And David mentions he's interested in Patreon.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think
you're on there. I know, Peter.
I'm on there. I don't think you've done a Patreon, Jeremy, have you?
I have not, but I recently started listening to you know, the Webcomics Weekly guys, Brad Geiger and Dave Kellett. They've actually had a podcast going for a long time called Comic Lab, and I wasn't aware of it, but as soon as I discovered it, I'm like, I would have been listening to this the whole time if I had known. They are very big on Patreon, and one of the big things that they kind of repeat over and over that they want their audience to hear is that they're looking at it as a subscription platform instead of a tip jar. The idea that it's not like people are just giving you money to help you make what you're making. They're signing up for exclusive content. And I think that's a really powerful idea. But what I have difficulty wrapping my mind around, and this is one of the reasons why I haven't started a Patreon yet, because I've heard from other people, like I spend a lot of time listening to a lot of podcasts. The guys that do One Fantastic Week, they're
awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I know if you've heard the show, they say all the time, just start a Patreon. It doesn't matter whether you don't necessarily have to have reward tiers, just simply get the account going. And some people, I'm making work. If you want me to keep making work, please, throw some money my way. And then as you grow an audience and you kind of figure out what the people do and don't want, then you can kind of start building in the reward tiers. So I'm looking at that in terms of probably, I don't know if it's going to be in a month, in 3 months, when I get around to launching it. But when I do, one of the things I want to start doing before that is talking to people on my mailing list and actually asking them, and actually asking people on my YouTube channel too, what would you want to see? What is it going to make you feel worthwhile to be contributing to? Because if it is just me producing artwork, that's great. The challenge I have is that exclusive content part that I mentioned with the Comic Lab guys, because I feel like it takes all of my energy as it is just to finish my comic. Like, not energy in terms of I don't have any more to give and the tank is empty, but just there's only so many hours in the day. And my goal has been working around to fit in publishing quarterly, fitting that in around my day job. And so far, the best I've been able to do is get like 2 issues and maybe 2.5 issues done in a given year. So if I start taking the work that I feel like all the work that I'm putting online right now, whether it's me drawing and sharing videos of my work in progress, whether it's me sharing pages as I'm going, all of that stuff, the stuff that I'm putting out now, and I think I'm sharing a lot of my creative process online, that feels like that's the entry point just to get people's attention. And it's not like I'm trying to trick people into following me. It's more that I'm trying to share what I'm doing in the hopes that the people that are interested in that will discover me by trying to get it on as many platforms as possible. Like, I post usually during the weekdays, I'll post on like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, DeviantArt, LinkedIn, and I just kind of share like a short blog post plus some figure drawings or some work in progress parts of my comic. But the question then becomes, if I'm going to start putting content into an exclusive bucket, I kind of separate out the stuff I put on social media for promotion from the stuff that I'm putting behind the exclusive content, then that's where I need to start talking to people that are following me and finding out what they want. And also, I don't want them to feel like I'm screwing them by saying, oh, this is what you like, so I'm going to take it away from you. But does the work in progress stuff become what goes into the subscription bucket, or does the final artwork become what goes beyond that subscription bucket? And if it's the final artwork, then I'm back to the same problem I have in terms of my publishing schedule, that work comes out very infrequently. And one thing that I was going to say, one other thing that the Comic Lab guys mentioned is starting a second webcomic because their show is specifically aimed at webcomic artists. Although it's useful information for anybody doing creative work online and doing comics, even if they're not doing webcomics. But they mentioned doing a second comic strip and running that online. And if you're doing a 3-panel or 4-panel gag strip a day, then maybe you could build up enough of a buffer that you could say, all right, I'm going to start putting some energy into the bucket of developing another strip. But when you're already trying to draw one comic book and not getting enough done, you can't just say, oh, well, let me just add a second comic book that I'm going to make an exclusive item for my Patreon subscribers. That way lies madness. And I have yet to untangle that Gordian knot. It's something that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about, but this is a new thing in terms of me really deciding to go the crowd-funded and crowd-supported route. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't started Patreon yet.
Right. Well, it's like what I've seen, and I've been on Patreon pretty early on. I forget exactly when I joined, but I've been struggling with exactly what it is and what I am, and it's like, I mean, my presence online has been just years of, what am I trying to put across? And, like you said, it's like, what's my audience? It's like, when it comes right down to it, my audience is just fans of my work. And I could have a greater focus than that, and I will develop one, but I'm just accepting that at the moment. As far as my Patreon, I've changed it many times, and I'm in the process of redirecting it again at the moment. I'm going to focus it on one of my webcomics, which is Neon Eden. It's something I started before, and I had a co-writer, and it sort of went nowhere because my communication with the co-writer evaporated. He went off to do his own things or whatever. Nice guy, but it's like, okay, so I'll just do everything myself and completely rewrite an outline and have sort of a set goal with it, as opposed to I was going to leave it open-ended and just do it, for as long as I wanted to or interest was there. But I was like, I'll just do 2 books. It will be 2 books in length, and I'll create a bunch of characters and do a whole tight outline, and it's a comic strip that will be in like newspaper strip form, so it would be 3 or 4 panels per update, and I figure that would be excellent for Patreon because I could update it more frequently than anything else. And it will really, like, it's essentially, it will be advanced to it publishing online elsewhere.
So it's not going to be, so it'll be exclusive for a temporary time, and then eventually you'll either have it on Comixology, or maybe you'll run it as a webcomic that's not on Patreon. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's like there's plenty of platforms where you could have webcomics, and so it'll probably be on a couple of different platforms eventually.
That's a great idea. Like, to sort of be repurposing, I don't know, to make whatever content you have. You're not making separate content for Patreon. You're making it for Patreon, so it's there first, and then eventually goes to the other ones or whatnot. That makes good sense.
Yeah, it's like that will be the primary focus, and I'll throw in things that will be bonus, but I won't have to, like, if I have a busy month, I'm not going to panic. They're there to see Neon Eden.
Yeah. I definitely don't feel like, not being on there. I don't have real strong opinions on using it as a tip jar or as like a membership sort of thing that you offer. I mean, I don't even think it'd be a problem with just getting it open just to have it going until you're able to figure out, what you want to offer. That sort of learn by doing thing, just kind of getting it going. But I definitely think that the biggest danger for me in thinking about it, like you kind of touched on, Jeremy, is it turning into a main focus when it really just needs to be something that helps supply your main focus. But it seems like something that could very quickly turn into something that was taking up too much of your time.
Yeah. That's a hard that's the hard nut to crack in terms of, like, you're trying to make a project, but then you're like, well, I need to make money, I need to eat. How do I do things that are going to be profitable? And there's either having the other work on the side, which takes time away from your project, or you start changing that project unto itself and adding things that are quote unquote features or ways to exploit it that aren't necessarily what you originally envisioned. But you end up, I've learned to enjoy live streaming and having a YouTube channel. That's become something that I genuinely enjoy, so I don't look at it as a burden anymore. But for a long time, I was doing it. Originally, my goal was simply to keep my work in front of people every week, even if I'm not publishing comics on a monthly basis. And that's a positive example. But there's a lot of other things that I've looked at pursuing. Like, just spending more time doing standalone art pieces and prints and doing originals, simply because obviously it takes a lot less time to draw an original drawing that you can sell or a commission than it does to draw a whole comic. But then I end up like loading up with all that work, and it's like it becomes a revenue stream, but not a big enough revenue stream to leave the day job. But it does become a big enough workload that it stops all work on the thing that I really want to do, which is make more comics.
Which I think everybody likes getting free stuff or whatnot, but for me, supporting an artist, it would be more of like a choice, I think. I don't think if I'm going to support somebody on Patreon, it's going to solely be very much at all be based on like what I get out of it. It's because like I like what this person's doing. Oh, sweet, I get a free sticker once every other month or something like that. I don't know. For me anyway, I know a lot of people like getting stuff, but especially as far as like Patreon centered around an artist doing visual art. I don't know. I think, but
not everybody is like looking to get something per se. It's like they have an interest in what you're up to, and maybe you could announce things on Patreon that you can't announce publicly, and it's like simple things or exclusives, like I'm doing something for one of the big two or whatever, it's like whatever comes up, you can give them sort of advance notice that, a convention list or whatever. One of the things that One Fantastic Week does, like Peter on that on that show, Pete Warbacher, I believe he posts his paintings there, which you could probably see everywhere. But I think he gives a high-res scan of them to his Patreons. So like, you could do that with your comic, and that doesn't take you that much more of an effort. It's like, if you want a high-res scan of my pages and my artwork, here you go. Thanks for supporting me.
You know what? That's very true, because I think the best rewards for on the creator side are things that we can deliver digitally. Just in the fact that if you can give somebody added value without actually having to ship something, because that's see, I find myself parroting the words that are in my head from other shows I've been listening to. The Comic Lab guys, I just listened to one of their episodes. We were talking about the idea of giving all of your patron money back through shipping. Because if you've got these, like, you're getting a postcard every month, you're getting a comic X amount of, every so many months, like, they might be supporting the creation of the product, but then when you end up shipping, if you're shipping internationally and you have a lot of products, and depending on the weight or the size, or like you're giving posters and prints, you can end up, if you're not careful about how you plan it, giving back all of the money, which eliminates the whole reason why people decided to support you.
Exactly.
You know, people that choose to support you, they want you to have that money. They want you to use that to make the thing that they see how passionate you're about and that they're trying to support. And that's one of the things, like, you know, where, like you said, having digital rewards can keep you from screwing yourself over and kind of staying true to the whole point of the Patreon, that they're supporting the thing that's being made. So you guys are right. I might be overthinking the whole value add element and the subscription element. And part of that is simply me trying to look at the way a lot of different people are dealing with this and trying to figure out, first off, looking at what's profitable and what's successful. What are the people that are having the most success that do the same type of work I do? What are those people doing? And then B, what feels authentic or appropriate to me? What doesn't feel like me just doing something as a cash grab? And then C, what do I actually have the bandwidth to accomplish? And I guess that it's not like I'm in a stage where I'm like, I don't know what to do with Patreon, I'm freaking out. It's more sort of like, I haven't decided yet if I want to open with just here's the thing, and I'll work out the tiers later, until I at least read over like a lot of what other people are doing. Like I was backing a few Patreons that were related to information that's been helping me.
Right.
But now sitting down and looking at a few that are, is this a comic book that I would want to read? And then what are the people sharing that they're doing that? So I kind of want to be both. I want to be both a student and an observer of the Patreon ecosystem before I start mine.
Yeah, I do know there's at least one, maybe more Patreon groups on Facebook that you can go to and see what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, they bring up a lot of good points. I mean, I haven't looked at it in months, but you know, sometimes it's just a matter of going with your gut. It's like, you know.
And once again, I guess looking at it, trying to figure out too strict of a business model on how you should do it. You know, once again, as artists or whatnot, the business side of it, it's just like another avenue to express creativity, maybe. I kind of like the idea of Scott Circlin wanting to do kind of like an old-timey membership sort of thing. Or like a fan club sort of thing. And that could get blown out of proportion pretty quickly and become like a huge investment, or it could be something as simple as like, you know, just a membership card that is a relatively cheap thing that you got a whole bunch printed and you send it in the mail to be like, hey, thanks, you're now a member of the, you know, Circworks Society or whatnot, you know. Oh, go ahead.
Like the Mighty Marvel marching whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old school.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe just like if you can show people, your patrons, a bit of creativity or a bit of fun, maybe like an actual thing in their hands isn't as important, but they're like, you know, I don't know.
No, I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, you know, one of the things that attracted me to your work is how creative you are. And it's like, I feel like that's my shortcoming for a creative field. I feel so bland, you know. It's like I just do stuff and you know, without any flair a lot of the times.
Well, I definitely don't get bland as a feeling from your work at all, but I feel like my creativity at this point kind of comes from, there's a lot I don't know how to do. Like, I don't know how to color digitally. I don't know how to do most things Photoshop. So if I want to come up with a polished, finished product, I've got to get a little bit creative about that. Or if I want to spend a whole lot of time doing character design things, once again, like how can I, oops, sorry about that. You know, how can I get creative to like, if the homework is assignment is first do a bunch of character designs, then the homework assignment becomes like, how can you bind all those together in a sellable product, you know? And I don't know. I think it's the limitations a lot of times is what, I don't know, helps foster creativity.
Yeah.
But thank you. That's a very kind compliment.
My
I just said
pleasure.
go ahead. I apologize.
Your like your Instagram videos, like where you start off, you choose a song, you do a little, you have your number of the 100 days you're working on, you're flipping through your pad, and it's a whole intro that's pretty cute and memorable to you and your work.
I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of that was kind of learning from the other 100 folks, and when all of them talk about what part's the hardest and what was the toughest thing to do, it was like, well, I could either just enter into it blind, like a lot of folks still are doing, and then encounter the same problems, or maybe try to come up with a couple little shortcuts and not be struggling every day. Although I still feel like I'm mostly struggling every day.
Well, here's an interesting question. Do you enjoy the struggle?
I do. I do. And I was thinking about this earlier because I know that there's some artists who talk about that they love the idea and they love the finished product. And I do love both those things. Those are kind of like the two highest points of the whole thing. But especially at this point when I have so much to learn, and yeah, it gets stressful and there's different ups and downs with it. But I think I am really enjoying the struggle. It makes me feel like I'm earning something. I'm not able to like go back to school to kind of learn all the stuff that like I wish I had done, 10 years ago or whatnot. So it's like, I don't know, if I'm stressing out, but I'm still making stuff, and still making stuff that I'm enjoying, want to get better, then I feel like, I don't know, I guess I'm doing something right. And I don't know. It's like the pain of a tattoo, like you're earning it, and that's the part that gets addictive. Sure, the tattoo's great, but it's the journey getting there,
Oh yeah.
You gotta, bleed for it, right?
You're right. That's what they tell me anyway.
Well, it's funny. What made that question pop into my mind is that I take figure drawing classes once a week, and I see so many artists in there of all ages. Some are young, like high school, college students. Some are people that have been working for years, and they get so frustrated that their drawings aren't coming out well, and they're beating themselves up. And it's almost like they've forgotten that making art is supposed to be fun. And I'm not saying that that's the majority of the class. It's not the majority, but I do see some people that are really just like, you can hear the cursing in the back of the room when their pictures aren't coming out right, when the model takes a particularly hard pose. And I avoided figure drawing for a number of years when I was like college age, because I was like, the things that came out of my head that I drew from my imagination just came out better. But after being out of school for a number of years and really trying to improve my craft, I realized, well, I'm always going to be bad at it if I don't sit down and work at it. Yeah. And I realized, anything that you don't just magically, some people are gifted in that way, but there's also people who can draw photorealistic and look at anything and Xerox it, but can't make up something out of their head to save their lives. And I realized it's just different muscles. And some people are naturally gifted in some muscle types, and other things you got to work at. But the thing I realized is that I stopped getting. I spent probably 2 years going through the beating up, frustrated phase, and now I just love it. And the things that I enjoy the most about class are the drawings that come out like shit, because it's like I don't like doing bad drawings, but I like having a puzzle to work on. And that's kind of like what you said about diving in and just having an actual problem to solve, that kind of focuses you. And I feel like that's, I guess, in the same way, like on the drawing and the creative side, that's I think a really healthy attitude to have on the business side. And I try to remember that, like when you were saying that, it reminded me of that idea of trying to actually, not just the fact that you're struggling with stuff, but to get into that process. Because I think that I don't necessarily love that struggle as much as I love the drawing struggle, but I'm trying to learn to love it more.
Sure.
I think that's what deters people from doing art for a living, or even just, some kind of hobby, regular habit. Because it is a lot of problem solving. It is a lot of just technical, doing the same thing over and over. that turn people off. But like, that's why you have to love what you do, and to really get into it and do it for any period of time. It's like I know, like, I was an anchor for many years, and lots of anchors, not all of them like doing backgrounds, liked inking backgrounds, but I loved it. It's like, that's what I did first. I worked with other anchors and was an assistant. And the first thing I did was fill in blacks, just the, the
Just
grunt
to make
work.
sure how to use a brush.
Yeah. Um, and I got really fast at that, so everybody wanted to keep using me. But eventually, I worked into just inking backgrounds, and I did that longer than I probably should have. I should have probably just stopped doing that for other people and pursued doing full inks for myself more. I was doing a combination of assisting other people and doing what I can on the side of that. That was the way I made money early on. But I didn't think I was a good enough inker, and it's like that was definitely the case. I had a lot to learn, but I figured, like, inking backgrounds would teach me how to ink everything. I just had that mentality that I am doing just this one thing, but I saw it as a full scope of everything that I needed to do in a full comic. It's like I could apply what I learned inking buildings and cars and planes and guns and whatnot to inking figures. To me, it's really the same thing.
Yeah, but you're developing a skill, or developed a skill, that obviously a lot of people don't like doing the setting stuff, and it's something that I need to work so much more on, because I'm that person whose sketchbook is filled with just a bunch of, figures here and there, and just floating in space. And sometimes all there is just a line at the bottom to show that, oh, there's a ground. But that's about it. That skill seems, I don't know. There's probably a reason why so many people dished it off on you, but it seems like a very worthwhile skill.
It's really a time saver, for inkers. Even pencilers use, at least back in the day, use like penciling background artists to assist in just getting stuff done. Making comics, especially for the big two, is such a machine. And there was a time where I was on a monthly schedule, and I couldn't freaking keep up, because it's just such a grind. I was doing it 7 days a week, and it's like I'm working on pages, and it's like, oh, it's next month already. I got to get on the next book, and it's like insane.
Yeah, I just picked up an Avengers title today, and on the top, where a lot of times there's like two names, like the writer and the artist, or sometimes three, there was like 6 or 7 last names going across the top of it. And when you open it up, like 3 of them were the inkers and everything. So it's like, it's just a madhouse. Just get the books done.
Yeah.
That nature of comics, where it can either be a whole bunch of people working together and collaborating to make something cool, or just 2 people, or it can be just one guy sitting alone, in their cramped little apartment. I don't know. Both sides of that with comics, I think it's a pretty cool thing that it can sort of be either,
Oh yeah, definitely. That's the thing. It's a medium that adapts to the creative team, because I know plenty of people who will lose their minds being at home by themselves all day long, and they need a creative team. And if they're working on something by themselves, they need to be in a studio because they need to have people around. And then there's people who maybe they have like one good person they fit in with and they do that. And then there's, I mean, I fall into the category of I both am very happy spending hours upon hours completely isolated, and I enjoy doing all aspects of the task. And I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I fall into that category of the kind of creator who kind of wants to do everything themselves. Mm-hmm. But I recognize that I don't think that that's how comics should be made. I realize that that's what I enjoy making, and it doesn't mean I'm never going to collaborate with someone, because I've done collaborations before, and I'm sure I'll do something in the future. But I know that. But also, it's just one of the things where it's a medium that it's not one size fits all. It's a medium that accommodates everyone's size.
Yeah, it is wonderful, isn't it? I love it.
You know what? What have you guys? Have you guys read anything lately that you really enjoyed?
Read? I constantly try to read.
I'm gonna grab a book because there's one that sticks out in my mind. Give me a moment. I'm gonna grab it here real quick.
Oh man, I'm so horrible. I just have stacks of comics and novels I want to get to. And,
what? I usually try to have 3 books going at one time. I try to have a comic book going, a prose book, and then some piece of nonfiction. And sometimes the nonfiction is art related, like it's an educational art book. Sometimes it's a book that's just nonfiction on a particular historical topic or something scientific, and it's kind of like research. But I try to have 3 going at any given time.
If anything, I read a lot to learn. It's like I'm finding I'm reading more stuff online, or I'm watching videos and reading manuals and that kind of thing. Good.
I want to be reading all the time, and the idea of having 3 books going sounds so appealing. And I need to kind of get like books on tape under control a little bit better and utilize that. But I feel so behind on reading, and I do think it's important for people creating to be reading. And I do think it's also really important for comic creators to be going into comic book stores still, because we can kind of spend so much time just working on our own stuff and our own ideas, and just a year goes by and you're like, oh yeah, what's on the shelf right now? I don't know. I definitely don't know everything there is to know about past comics, or I'm not one of those guys, but it does seem kind of important to like stay up on that a little bit, because I don't know.
It helps to know what's going on, and yeah, you I wouldn't necessarily run out to read like Marvel and DC, because I think they jumped the shark in many ways, but I would go pick up some popular and indie titles, because I think those have more heart and direction to them.
I do love a lot of what Image is putting out and has been for a while.
So what book did you go grab?
Yeah, so when I went to the Vancouver Comic and Arts Fest a few months ago, it's a person I just happened to run into, and it's this book here. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but it's by Abby Howard. Yeah, it's such a beautiful book, and this person doesn't seem to be necessarily, I don't know, I haven't found a huge presence of theirs really pushing this online a whole bunch. I haven't looked a whole bunch, but if you search, it's just a really cool book. It's a thick book. The cartooning in it is just wonderful and amazing. It really kind of hits a vibe of like cartoonist as well as comic book, if that makes sense. I know it is the same thing, but sometimes, I don't know, when it's a little bit more Calvin and Hobbes and Marvel and DC type of a thing, but
that's fine.
It's kind of a childish story, but it's also really grown up, and there's monsters and they're eviscerating people sometimes, but then there's these little cutesy characters. And in the kind of thing that I'm wanting to make with a Halloween character, it was just, I don't know, I feel like sometimes people like not want to read it if it's something too close to what they're doing, but I've just sort of fallen in love with this book.
Well, it looks interesting.
one of these like you know how like a Bible has like the tassel, like the page holder ribbon. It's got like a nice black one there, and it's like all black edge paper. And this, I don't know, it's a beautiful book, and it's really awesome so far. I haven't read the whole thing, but what I've read, I really kind of fallen in love with. So, Abby Howard, The Last Halloween.
Oh, nice.
Reading Rainbow.
In the chat, Dee Dee mentions she just finished Think Like an Artist. Good book on creativity. I'm not sure who wrote that, Dee Dee.
Well, Questlove has a book out. I'm gonna have to check that out.
And yeah, Creative Quest.
I think I saw that on Audible.
Oh, cool.
You know, Audible, that is actually my jam in terms of like, that's where most of my book reading is going from. Because I have like an hour commute each way every day. So usually I'll either listen to like a podcast one way and then an audiobook the other. Or sometimes with some books, depending on the content, I'll just have that on while I'm doing the day job, just kind of like running in the background.
Okay, Think Like an Artist and Lead a More Creative, Productive Life, book by William Gumpertz, Gompertz. So you can go check it out. Yeah, Dee just said that in the chat. I Googled it. So we've been going an hour. I have a friend of mine once again, but I usually do these about an hour. You know, I think this was a great episode, and I thank you guys immensely for making it so. Otherwise, it would have just been me mumbling nonsense.
Well, thanks very much for having us. It's been a blast getting to know you guys for sure. I've not done a whole lot of these, and I was sort of nervous about it, and I found myself just sitting back and listening because I listen to a lot of your guys' shows, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should say something once in a while here.
Oh, yeah, it was great to have you, and definitely you're welcome to come back. Let's do a little outro. Jeremy, once again, where can people find you?
I also wanted to say real quick, it was great meeting you, Scott, and I'm definitely going to check out your work online. And Peter, thank you for having me. It's always fun to chat with you, whether online or through message, what have you. It's always a good time. So thanks for having me. You can find my work at gerimi.net. There's a link where you can sign up for my mailing list. You can check out previews of my current comic Morningstar, which is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western.
Whoa, that sounds awesome. Sorry.
Thank you. The reaction I hope to get when I tell people.
Yeah. And Scott, where can people find you?
Well, firstly, Jeremy, likewise, it was great getting to meet you. I feel like we've got a lot in common. And Peter as well, thanks very much for having me again and for the support that you've sort of shown on I'd Rather Be Drawing, and my channel is kind of going to 100. It means a lot. But where you folks can find me, because I am in the middle of my 100 days of making comics, and today is day 20. If you look over on Instagram, under Mr. Green Draws, that's mr.greendraws. And then anywhere else, if you search I'd Rather Be Drawing. We have a www.I'dRatherBeDrawing.com, as well as on Facebook, and then right here on YouTube.
Yes, and you don't have enough subscribers, so everybody go to his channel and subscribe. I'll put links down below as soon as I get a minute. The video has to process first, I think, but it'll be there shortly. And this is what I do a little tonight. This is just, I don't know, characters designs, although that looks like Joe Quesada a little bit. I
thought I saw Paul McCartney kind of starting to emerge there.
But yeah, it's like these I could use for possible character designs. I don't know. Well,
Patreon reward,
possibly. Yeah, Patreon reward. I'll mail you to my original sketches. Yeah, you can finance these shows, these fine shows on patreon.com/Peter Palmiotti. And I don't have any set schedule to these just yet. So I'll be doing it randomly as I gather groups of people up for you to enjoy and check out. And yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody in the chat. Had a bunch of people come in. And yeah, subscribe, Scott. Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for stopping by.
And catch you again next time. All right. Take care.